Hello everyone. Today we'll be talking about Flexbox. If you check out my last video where I talk about display property values, inline block, like some element has a default display value, and also we talked about position. If you check that video out first, then it's time to actually upgrade ourselves to a new technology called Flexbox. It's not really new. It has been in the block for quite some time, but it's definitely very, very powerful CSS tool that we can use to create responsive layout. And that's what we're going to learn today. So we're going to do two things today. We're gonna learn about this cool resource that we have here. So if you have any question about CSS, or you just want to learn about new technologies or read some articles, you can definitely go to CSS3. You can bookmark this website. It's a great website for a CSS resource and just reading articles on CSS. You can search grid, and then you can see that there is tons of articles popped up. There is a complete guide to grid box as well, which we will talk about in the next video. But today we'll be talking about, and we'll go over actually a complete guide to Flexbox from CSS3 article. And this article was written by Dario Grassi. Okay. All right, so before I use Flexbox, because Flexbox is a modern CSS technology, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use a website called caniuse.com. In that caniuse.com, I just put Flexbox or whatever technology I want to research on. I can just put on there, and there is the browser compatibility. We definitely, when we are making a website, we definitely want to make our website so that it works on all the browsers out there. So you can see that for Internet Explorer 6 and 9, it's like back in the day, they don't have Flexbox support. So port 11, Internet Explorer 11, I know there are some market share out there that use Internet Explorer 11 still, and it has a partial support, but anything above 11 it has. So for example, Edge has from 12 to 86, and also 87 has Flexbox support. In Firefox, we also have from 28 and up, it's all green. From Chrome 21 to right now, it's like 88 to 90. Safari, Opera, iOS Safari, Opera Mini. So you can actually see all the browser compatibility from this website. It's a very, very neat website. You can also select special keyword as well. So for example, display, let's say display inline flex, and if I search, you can also see that it shows you the compatibility. These two websites are going to be in the description below, and I highly recommend you guys check that out. And today's video, we are actually going to use a proper code editor. So we have been coding in CodePen so far. So we will be using Visual Studio Code. So if you go to visualstudiocode.microsoft.com and download the middle one, which says Visual Studio Code. I'm on a Windows, so I install Windows 1. If you're on a Mac, go ahead, download and install on a Mac. So your Visual Studio Code will look like something like this. And then I can go ahead and open a folder. And then here is a folder that I have already created. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, select folder. Now I am in that particular folder. So this is the folder. Now through Visual Studio, I can actually create a file. So I definitely need, by clicking here, I would need an index.html. And then you'll see that it created that index.html file here. Now, if you're wondering what I have this logo index.html logo, that's because I have installed an extension for this, and you can do that extension as well if you like. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and create a style .css file as well. Here's my style. And let's go and take a tour. So this one is Explorer. So this is your file section. So you toggle open and close. This is your open editor. So sometimes when you're working, you will end up with lots of tab here. So you can actually go in the open editors and close all editors at the same time. So that's the benefit for that open editor right there. You can search within Visual Studio. This one is for source control, which is you can publish to GitHub. GitHub is something that we will talk about in the future video, but not now. And then this one, this is for run and debug, like test, if you want to run a test for that. For your code, and this one is your extension. So these are my extension. These are extensions that I have already installed. So it's kind of like an app store in your Apple devices or Google Play in your Android devices. And you can actually search for extensions that you can install to make your Visual Studio code. So I have like a prettier code that automatically formats my code once I save it. I have that installed. Don't worry about others. I do have a material icon theme, and that's actually giving the all the logo, the icon of like in this. You can see that there is a CSS3 icon, and here's an index HTML icon. So if you want that, you can install material icon, and then. But for today's video, though, I want you to install Live Server. So if you search Live Server, I want you to install this one by Ritwik Day. So if you click on here, just install it. I have already installed it, so it's right here. And I'm going to show you what it does. It's basically once you save your code on the browser, it's going to spin up a local server for you. And it's going to automatically refresh the changes. So you don't have to manually refresh the page every time you made any change to your code. Okay, so index HTML. So let's go ahead and run some code right now. Let's just run a boilerplate. One thing you can do in Visual Studio, it's just it has just like CodePen. Like if you do H1 and tab, it's going to create that opening tag and closing tag for you. Also, if you do exclamation mark, and you can see Emmet abbreviation, Emmet should come with your Visual Studio. I think it's built in. If not, then obviously you can search for Emmet in the extension market and install it from there. But I believe it comes with Visual Studio. So once you just have exclamation, just tab over, then it's actually going to give you a boilerplate just like this. So you have your head, your doc type, and your body. Okay, so this meta line right here, named viewport content, it's with device width, initial scale 10. This line of meta tag right here is important for your website to be responsive. That's the first step that you want to do. All right, so let's go ahead and link my CSS. So I'm going to do link and see it actually giving me a suggestion that this is what I want to write. So if I click on here, it's going to give me link, relevance or style sheet, href, and I know I named it style.css. So I'm going to press style, and when I press just S, it also gave me a suggestion that, okay, are you looking for this file? Which is yes. So I'm going to click on here, and there we go, style.css. I'm going to go ahead and save this and write something here. I'm going to open up H1 tab. I'm going to say this is H1. I'm going to save this and right click. Here I have open with live server. So if I click on here, you see that it opened up in my Edge. So right now I have a Microsoft browser. That is my default browser. So, and look at the address right here. You see 127.0.0.1 and then colon 5500. So this is the 5500 port. A computer has tons of port. So by default, the Open Live server actually takes the 5500 port here. So if you just take this, copy and put it somewhere else, it's gonna work. So it's running. You can also check out here on the bottom, port 5500. Okay, so this is the server. So anytime I make a change here, so if I do like P and write something, you see there is indicating 1. That means it's saying that you have one file that you haven't saved. And also it this dot right here, or circular shape right here, indicates that this is the exact file that you need to save. So I'm going to go ahead and control save, and then you see that immediately it pops up on the browser, so I don't have to manually refresh each time. So it saves us time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of H1 and then save this. So Flexbox, it helps. It's a very powerful tool. It helps create a responsive website, and it's easier to create a layout. Before Flexbox with display inline and float, it was really hard to center something vertically and horizontally. But with Flexbox, it's now really easy to do so. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna go create div, and I'm gonna go ahead and give it a class of container. Container class. I'm gonna create another div. Now look at the shortcut. So I have like a div dot, I'm gonna do a child. So child dot is for the class because it's a class. I want to say, hey, create a div with a class of child, and I want to create 3 of them. So I can do star, right? And then 3 is basically saying times 3. And if I tab over, it's going to give me a div with a class of child 3 times. So this is the parent div. Container is the parent div, and then within container I have 3 more div with each has a class of child. The alt in Visual Studio. So I have 3 cursors running at the same time. So I do div 1, and then I can change it to 2, then I can change it to 3. Okay. All right, if I save this, you can see the div 1, div 2, div 3 right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and style this for visual effects so you can see. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select container, and then I'm going to give it a width of 800 pixel, and then I'm going to give it a height of 800 pixels. So I want a square box, and then I want a border just to see what we are working with. I'm going to say 1 pixel. I want a solid line, and I want a light gray. If I save this, you can see right now here that this is our container, our parent div. Okay, within that we have 3 other divs. I'm going to go ahead and give it a background, so it is you can see it. Okay, perfect. Now go ahead and let's give this div 1, div 2, and div 3 some width and height. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, I know that each one of them has a class of child. So I'm going to go do width of 200 pixel. And then I'm going to give it a 200 pixel as well. This is, again, is going to be a square. And I'm going to go ahead and do in fact, that's all I'm going to do. Save. And you can see it right now, but this is what I'm going to do. I am going to use child, then colon. I'm going to say 9th child. So not 9th, nth. So I will select first child, okay, and then colon, and then say nth child, and in parentheses, I can specify which div I want. So since all the 3 divs have child as their classes, I can actually target each div that has a child class with the pseudocode here, nth-child. And I will do 1 here that will select div 1. I'm going to give it a background color of, let's say, red. You see that there is the red color. And I'm going to copy it 2 more times, changing to 1 to 2, and here 1 to 3, and I'm gonna go ahead and give orange, and I'm gonna give this one to green. If I save it, now you can see visually is that there is 3 div within a parent div. Okay, now by default, you already know that div has a display of block. Now display block, what it does, it takes the maximum space, and it also introduces a line break before it and after it. So that's why div 1 it's on its own line, div 2 on its own line, and div 3 it's on its own line. Now when we are to use Flexbox, we have to declare Flexbox in the display of the container of the parent, so it can manipulate the children within. So I have to call display flex on the container. So I'm gonna go ahead and do display, and I'm gonna say flex. And if I save this, you can see immediately there's a change. Now all the divs with their respective width 200 pixel appears to be on one line. It looks like it has now an inline block display value. Okay, so that's what display flex does. You always want to declare the display flex on a parent container. Just add div, just surround the elements that you want to position. Just surround those with another outer div and call it like a parent, or give it a class of a container, and then call display flex on the parent div. I have some comment here. All right, so next thing what we can do is with display flex, by default is going to be in one line. Now I can change it back to look like a block element, which is going to be, and with that I will have to have like flex direction, and I can say column. With that column, it's just going to go back to the same layout as it was as a block element. Okay, so I can do that also. Now flex direction takes also row. Now I don't have to specify this one because by default flex direction is row, so I don't really have to say it, but you know, just know that flex direction does take row. It also takes row reverse. So if I save it, it just reverse. That means it starts from the right hand side and then go to the left. So div 1, div 2, and div 3. Same thing with column as well. So if I do column, it's going to go on from top to bottom, div 1, div 2, and div 3. If I do column reverse, it's going to start from the bottom and then div 1, div 2, and div 3. And when it starts, it always starts from div 1. Okay, all right, so that's flex direction. Let's talk about flex wrap. So there is another property called flex wrap. So before I show you that, let me show you. So if I make this container right now, it is 200 pixel. Div 1, div 2, and div 3 is a 200 pixel the size. Now if I make the container itself the width of, let's say, 500 pixel smaller, so let's see what happened. Now you can see that there is no space available to the side anymore, but also the div 1, div 2, and div 3s are not exactly 200 pixel anymore. So it is responsive. So it is actually stretching to accommodate its size. So it's not respecting the size that I specified on here on the child class with 200 pixel, because by default flex it just makes flexible. So with its container size, it is going to stretch and grow as its container or parent div grows and stretches. Okay, now if I don't want that behavior, I can specify here it is called flex rep, and no rep is the default. So this is exactly what's happening with the no rep. If I don't want this, if I want Flexbox to respect my 200 pixel width, then I can do a wrap. And if I save this, you can see right now div 1, div 2 is 200 pixel each, and because div 3 cannot be here because there's no 200 pixel space in here, it is now at the bottom on its own line. So that's what wrap does. Wrap reverse. And if I save this, it's just going to, it's reverse it. So it's going to start from the bottom. Div1, div2, and div3 will be up. So we have no wrap, wrap, and wrap reverse. So flex flow is a combination of flex direction and flex wrap, where you can declare both direction and the wrap of the flex on the same line of code. Okay, so the next stop is called justify content. So if you're wondering how did I comment this with just a keyboard shortcut, so the keyboard shortcut is if you click on here and then Control/, it's going to comment this out for you. And then if you save this, if you save this, you see that it went back to the row, and I'm going to go back to 800. So here is our div1, div2, and div3. That justify content works with an axis, okay? So this is the main axis, and this is a cross axis. The red line is the main axis, and the green is the cross axis. Justify content takes a flex start, flex end, center, and space between, space around, space evenly, a lot of stuff. So the first thing what we're gonna do is right now by default it has a flex start. So I can just do flex start, save. That basically means, and it's gonna work with the main axis. So this 3 div is just gonna start from the left, okay, the very left. There's no space, and it's just gonna give some space to the right. So that's what flex start is. If I change it to flex end and save it, you can see that it's now starting from the right. Even though with the reverse, div1 was here, div1, div2, div3, justify content just moved the whole block of elements to the right. So it's div1, div2, div3 with space right here. So that's what flex end and flex start does. We can also center it. Dead center, horizontally, we can center it with justify content. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out again. I think I made my point with the axis. Now justify content, if you want to center, it is going to automatically, perfectly going to center it for you with justify content center. Okay, so it has a flex start, which will start from left to right, flex end, which is the opposite, which is right to left, and then center is going to be dead center horizontally with the main axis. We also have something called space between. Now space between is between these two, between this div. So I can say space between. Now it is going to allocate all the available space in between these 3 divs. So right now you can see div1 is pushed right to the left, and there's a space, and then div2 and there's a space, and div3 is pushed to the right. So that's what space between is. We can also do space around. If I click on here, space around will create a space around the div. So you can see it here. It's more space here, and there's a little bit of space on here as well. So space around creates a space around the div. And we have space evenly. If I click on here, now space evenly allocates space, exactly the same amount of space around each div. Now I can just copy it and go to can I use support and put it right here. And you can see that which browser actually has a support with this. All right. About vertical center, if I want to do it vertically with the cross axis. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to another property value called align items. Now align items also can center it vertically. So right now with this 3 line of code, display flex, calling display flex, and then justify content center, which will make all the divs to horizontally center, and align items center will make it vertically center. So now it is in dead center. Before Flexbox, it was a pain to have something in dead center with float and all the display and positioning value. But Flexbox makes it really, really easy. So here you can see align items also takes start, just like justify content. It's gonna stay at the top. It's going to be end. If I do it, it's gonna go at the bottom vertically now, because it works, align items works with the cross axis now. And it also does center. So flex start, flex end, and center will be align items. Okay, now here is what you have to notice something. Let's get rid of this 2 line of code, and we have a display flex. So what if I make it this flex direction column? Now what flex direction column actually does, it actually makes, uncomment this, it actually puts the main axis on here vertically and the cross axis going to be horizontally. So with flex direction, the main axis is no longer here horizontally. The main axis is as in vertical right now because you change the direction to the flex. So right now, if you see all justify content center, you see that it is now centered but vertically. So if you have a flex direction column, so you actually manually change the direction, you also have to think about that justify content is just going to work kind of like opposite of align items. So vertically centered, you have to use justify content, and to horizontally centered, you have to then use align items. There you go. So we got justify content and then align items, align self. So let's go ahead and call justify content center, and then call align items. Let's do center. Another cool feature is that we can do align self, and with align self, I can individually move each div. And I'm going to, instead of calling align self in the parent, I'm actually going to go to the div that I actually want to individually move. So I want, let's say, div 1 to appear, let's say, at the start or at the end, and just break from that current flex flow. So let's say I'm going to go to the child 1 here, div 1, and I'm going to go ahead and do align self, and I can do flex start. So you can see it went to the top. I can do flex end, it's at the end right now, and also I can do center, which was center. That one. There is another one that is called order. Now order, I don't recommend you to use order. What's basically going to do is on this. So let's say if I do order 3. Yeah, so if you can change the order, so if you can make div 1 appears on the 3rd, so yeah, make it 2. There you go. So I made child and child 3, it is order 1, and then 2 is 2, and then 1. So you the screen, because screen readers always going to read it based on the HTML and not the CSS. So you are changing the elements right here in the CSS, but not in the HTML. So screen reader will still go from div 1, div 2, and div 3, but on your page right now is now div 3, div 2, div 1. So even though you have that option to use order 1 in order property values, I recommend you not to use it. So let's talk about right now is the flex grow. So remember when I made 500 and you see that all the boxes are shrunk. So what if I don't want that? What if I don't want it to shrink? I want this to, let's say, just respect the width that I specified. Let's call flex shrink on child div 1 right here. And I want to say 0. That means none. I don't want this div 1 to shrink. So if I save this, and now I make the container to 500 pixels, you can see the div 1 has not shrank. Div 1 is the same size as respecting my 200 pixel. Div 2 and div 3 has shrunk. Now if I do the same thing with, let's say, div 2 and also in div 3 and save, now you see that everything is now all, getting out of the container because I am specifically saying that, hey, do not shrink. All right, so let's say on div 3, I want it to shrink. So I'm going to say 1, save, and you see that div 3 is now taking the minimum space or whatever space level available right there. And there is another one that is called flex grow. So let's go ahead and do it on div 3. I'm going to say flex grow, I'm gonna say 1. That means I want it to grow. So right now it's 500 pixel. You don't see any difference, but what if I do 800 pixel? Now you can see div3 is significantly larger than div1 and div2, and there is no space. And that's because I mentioned flex grow 1. What I'm basically saying that, hey, child 3, which is div3, needs to grow and consume all the available space that it has. It needs to consume all the space and just grow with it. If the container grows, you need to grow with it as well. If I don't want that behavior, simply just 0, save, and it back to normal. Another one is called flex basis. So flex basis, to understand flex basis, let's do, I want flex grow on div2. I'm going to say flex grow to 1, save. And you can see div2 is now bigger than both of them, and there's no space. What if I do flex grow to 2? I'm basically saying that div3 needs to be twice the size of div2, because I say 2 here. If I save, now you can see div3 is a little bit larger than div2 and div1. Div1 is going to be obviously the smaller one. Now div3 is larger than div2. Now, is it double the size of div2? Not quite. It's not double the size. And that's because it is allocating space based on, it is accounting for this width 200 pixel that I already specified. That's why it is, because div2 already has a 200 pixel, and on top of that, it's actually whatever space it's getting, it's doubling up that space and allocating to div3. That's why it's not quite the double size of div2, even though I specify it. Now, if I want to make div3 exactly the double size of div2, what I can do here is that I can say flex basis, and I can say 0. What basically I'm saying that, hey, just assume that there's no width specified, just start from 0. Okay, that should be your basis. Now you can see that div3 is exactly double size of div2. All right, now there is definitely a shortcut, and that is flex. Simply just call flex, and the first one will be grow. So let's say on the 2 I can say 1 for grow, and then shrink. That's going to be 0. I don't want it to shrink. And then the basis is either going to be 0, you start with nothing, or you can actually do auto, which will just, hey, Flexbox, figure it out, and then you can do that. So this is a shorthand for flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis that you can write in one line. Okay, so I can just do the same thing here with grow 2, save. You can see the same effect on the website. All right, so that's pretty much it. In a nutshell, you can go ahead and read on this even more. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment below, and I will see you in the next one, where I will talk to you about the grid box system.